recording button here. I just want to assure everybody here that we're here to serve you all. We're not going to leave anybody hanging. We will be extending passes. We don't know how long we will extend those passes for, but I can assure you that we will do it in the most fair way possible, so that nobody is missing out. So once we have a better idea of when things are going to normalize and classes might be able to start up, and we'll see how much time has passed, we will definitely have a plan to extend those passes. So please don't worry about that piece. You know, we will definitely take care of you. The other side of it is, you know, what happens with your dog's training. And, you know, that's really the whole purpose of today's call, is to be able to kind of continue to feed you all's brains when it comes to dog training knowledge. And so, you know, this is going to be kind of a fun, goofy, informal type of call. I can't promise you it's going to be the most professional produced call. That's not how we're rolling for this one. This is experiment round one. So thank you all for being very dedicated to hearing us make all sorts of mistakes as we go through and do this. So we will spend some time here asking trainers questions. I've got a couple of questions that we've just kind of pre-planned out, nothing real crazy, but I'll ask them. We'll have our trainers answer those questions. And we will also answer the questions that were sent in to us. And in addition to that, once we get through everything, then we will open it up for you all to ask questions and to get responses from the trainers. So as we go through things, you know, if we ask a question, we may get one trainer answering. We might have a subject that every single trainer wants to add a piece to. So we'll do our best to kind of manage the time here so that you know, we don't spend too much time in one area. So if you're not familiar with this platform that we're using for meetings called Ring Central Meetings, it's very similar to the Zoom platform. And on most of your applications at the bottom, there's a chat bar. And if there's something that comes up while we're talking and going through something and you have a question, I don't want you to not ask the question. So please make a point to go ahead and write it right into the chat bar. I'll be keeping an eye on that as we go through things. And this way we can go ahead and add that into the conversation while we're going through it, which can make it a little bit more interesting for all of us. So if there's no major questions right now, what I'm going to do here, I think almost all of you probably know the trainers here, but I just thought it would be cool for those of you who haven't actually had a personal introduction to each of the trainers, just to have each one of our trainers take 30 seconds or less to just give us a quick idea about your background, so that those of the clients here that are on the call that haven't met you before or maybe haven't heard about your past can get a good idea of what that's actually like. So if it's okay, I would like to go ahead and start off with Jessica. And I was trying to unmute you, but
I'll unmute myself. It's okay. So for those of you who have not met me, my name is Jessica Hudgens, and I am the training team lead of the DogiZone department. I have been with DogiZone since before it was DogiZone, when it was just a training facility. And I actually started where a lot of you guys are, as clients. And I've worked my way up, lots of hard work, elbow grease, sweat and tears to get to the point to where I'm at. So it's been a great journey for myself.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica. And Candace, you are one of the newest members on the team here. So we will throw you into the deep end here.
Thank you. I think I've met a lot of you in passing at group classes as I was trying to herd all the cats into the right rooms and the right rings for the classes. But I am kind of in that train the trainer type mode. I have taken Andrew's class at Montgomery College and am now really looking forward to becoming a dog trainer in the future.
Awesome. And Karen.
All right. Well, I'm Karen Vogel, and I've been training dogs for, gosh, about 12 years now. I initially got my training through Animal Behavioral College. I finished there dog training program. And I've been at DogiZone now for 3.5 years. Can't believe it. And work with some of the best trainers in the country.
Awesome. And Milton.
Hey, thank you. So some of you already know me, but for those of you that don't, my name is Milton. I've been with DogiZone since November of 2016. I also took Andrew's course through Montgomery College. I was fascinated with dogs prior to even coming to DogiZone, and then once I joined the team, I really immersed myself in learning about dogs and just continue to do that through the training department and engaging with you guys. So it's a big pleasure.
Awesome. Awesome. And Terrence.
Hi, my name is Terrence. I've been with DogiZone now for about 1.5 years, maybe a little over 1.5 years. And I've been training dogs for over 27 years, but I was a former police officer in Washington, D.C., and I was a canine trainer there, where I trained all types of disciplines.
Awesome. And last but not least, George.
Myself, the senior trainer at, pardon me?
You were muted there for a second. Go ahead.
Hi, name's George Cockrell. I'm the senior trainer at DogiZone. I've been with Andrew since before he was a dog trainer himself. So I've got 43 years of training experience under my belt, having run companions dog training for 35 years. And I've been with DogiZone now, I guess, I don't know, 6, 7 years, something like that. So how y'all doing?
All right. Awesome. So why don't we go ahead and start off just with a kind of fun and interesting question. This may be eye-opening for some people, maybe not. So the question is going to be what's the single most common mistake that you trainers see people making with their dogs? So, Terrence, why don't I start off with you, since you look like you're unmuted, and then whoever else wants to go after Terrence can go ahead.
So one of the most common mistakes I see people making is, one, you become very relaxed and comfortable, and you start talking to your dogs like they're human, which they do not understand you. Dogs learn in one-syllable tones. The other thing is I see people getting very comfortable and they give their dogs repeated commands for the same one thing they want their dogs to do.
Excellent. Who else wants to add to that?
I'll kick in on that. Ready?
Yep.
All right. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is they assume their dogs know the right thing to do. And tend to get frustrated when the dog doesn't do what they hope they do. Direct the dog. If you're not directing the dog, they're going to usually come up with the dog thing to do, which usually leads to them doing something you're less than happy with.
Very good. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add this, Karen. On the flip side of that, I think that one of the common mistakes is that they forget to tell their dogs they're doing the right things. They tend to focus on all the wrong, what they're not doing right, instead of, gosh, you did the right thing, you sat, and I didn't even have to ask you.
So interesting how we can fall into that. We're constantly trying to improve the dog and make them better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Anybody else want to add to that? All right. Yeah, those are great. So, all right. Next question here is, how can owners use their free time or not so free time right now, depending on what you've got going on at home? How can you utilize that time to really be improving your dog's behavior? What are some of the things that they can be doing while they're working from home, dealing with the kids, and trying to juggle 10 things at the same time?
I can lead to that one because I am in those shoes right now as homeschool mom, working, managing certain things. One of the biggest things that we can do in our own spare time that we don't normally have is to be able to do things in the moment and in practical applications with things. So guiding the dog to sit before going out of the doors, working and practicing on place and stay, whatever that looks like in the moment. Or when you don't have that time to do it, you can always put a leash on the dog and sit on them and get them to settle and be calm with you. So that's better than not doing anything.
George here. I'm going to expand upon what Jessica just said and say that every time you engage with your dog, you are in fact teaching them something right or wrong. So since you engage with them, you're going to pet them, you're going to feed them, you're going to walk them, you're going to rub them. Every time you do that, you have an opportunity to have them do something for you and learn through repetitions. So I would suggest if you're trying to clean up your sits, every time you engage the dog, throw those sits at them. Make sure you follow through. Same would go with down or anything else. Just take advantage of the moment you're in, like Jess said. Just remember, every time you're engaging your dog, you're in a position to teach them something or to make something a little better.
And I would add in on to that what Jeff and George said. Basically, it comes down to living obedience. Basically, every day in your life, you want to just live obedience to the point where you're not training, you're just doing obedience and you don't even realize you're doing obedience. You can make a game of it with their food, maybe not feed them one of their meals and play the free come game. Make them work for it. And I know that there are pets that you may think that, well, my pet shouldn't have to work for food. However, that's how they're made. They're made to work and not like work like it's a job, but they're made to do something to get something. And that also establishes you as a pack leader as well, or the leader, and guide them the right way. The biggest thing is you just want to guide them, like George said, and help them do the right thing.
Awesome.
If I could add, I'm similar to what Jess said. I'm using this time, especially with now that we have more time, use it to kind of calibrate your relationship with your dog. So I know, for example, I train a lot with my dog, but my roommate doesn't usually have a lot of time. And now that there's time, we can all get training with the dogs to better everybody's individual relationship with the dog. So a good fun exercise would be, if you have multiple, members of the household, calling the dog each and rewarding from room to room so everybody can get in and do a fun training exercise with your dog.
The roommates, family, kids.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you, Milton. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, just to add one more thing. On the other side of it, it's a great time to crate train your dog when you have everyone at home, so that they learn that they're supposed to be nice and quiet in the crate while everyone's home, not just when everyone leaves. So it's a great time to train that as well if you don't have time and you have to work and the kids have to do the school work, to have that dog in that crate and be nice and quiet.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the times it's we want to put a definition on, putting the dog in the crate while we're home is a bad thing, but it's only the definition that you give it. It doesn't have to be a bad thing or a good thing. It's just a thing, and it's a place for them to be. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Anybody else want to add anything on? Otherwise, we'll jump on to the next one. So what do you all think is the most important thing for dogs to learn? What would you say is the number one thing that if you're going to teach the dog one thing, what would it be?
George here. Attention to handler. Without attention, you have nothing else. What your dog's looking at is what they're thinking about. And that's what they're listening for. It's even what they're smelling for. So keeping that where that dog's very responsive to when you call, and so they're looking at you so they can hear you.
Awesome. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that teaching them to understand what it means for you to be the leader, that basically everything comes through you. You are the most important thing to them, and that when they realize that it's a happy life for them, it's a great life. It's a good thing to come when called. It's a good thing to sit. It's a good thing to down. It's a good thing to go to place, because that's pleasing daddy or mommy. So just showing them, and again, by showing them, you're not being mean or aggressive, but it's just through the repetition of meaning what you say and saying what you mean.
Awesome.
I'll piggyback that on a little bit, Jessica here. I think one of the most important things with our dogs in our particular house, because we've got 3, is being able to set applicable rules and boundaries. If we don't have the rules of the house established, the dogs don't understand what is required of them, what's necessary in certain times. Without that foundation of expectations built, then you can't get any of the other things. So it's a really big stepping stone and building blocks. Just being able to live with the dogs happy.
Awesome. I got a question that came in here that says, what would be the most optimal way to take advantage of doing class at home? Is it better to do repetition, patterned, or random training steps / tasks?
Good question. George here. Well, dogs we know learn by repetition. So anything that's repetitive and successful over and over again, you're going to see improvements on. That said, I mentioned earlier, anytime you engage with your dog, you have the opportunity to get a repetition or 2 in before you feed them or before you walk them or before you pet them. So in that way, it could be seen as kind of a random thing. But there ain't nothing wrong with taking 5 or 10 minutes and doing the same thing over and over again for 5 or 10 minutes till they get it, and then let them have a little off time.
Yeah, to piggyback that on a little bit, as you're getting the repetitions in, you'll know, if you remember from how we do it in class, what things to look for when you're ready to do the progression of building up we call it the 3Ds of dog training, building with distractions, the distance that you're moving away from the dog, or that the distraction's next to the dog, or duration of time building that up. So building those stepping stones.
Awesome.
Can I ask a question kind of related? So without, I guess, wanting to just accidentally just playing with my dog, he has a favorite toy, which is this little thing. And he has now learned.
What is that?
It's a Kong. It's like a mini Kong squeaker toy that he just likes to grab and squeak all the time. But he's learned that whenever I say, because when we play and I throw something, I say, go get it. And he, goes and gets it and comes back. But now he's learned that go get it means this toy. So even if I'm playing with a different toy and I throw the other toy, if I say go get it, he tries to find this one. So
I'll address that with Mr. Leonardo. He's telling you he does have a preference for that toy.
Yeah.
You should take advantage of that.
Okay.
And use that as his main primary reinforcer, which means pick that thing up when you're not playing with him and put it away. And when you bring it out, that should give you some motivation, or give him some motivation to work for you.
Oh yeah, it's great.
I'm a big one for telling you to choose, pick your battles. If he wants that one and you can get him to do some repetitions of his stuff for that one, hey, use that one. As a matter of fact, I would advise when you get a chance to buy a second one.
Oh, I have like 4.
Good, because it's not so tragic as when their whoopee dies,
Well,
so.
What's funny is, because it's so small, it gets lost often.
Yeah.
And just a few days ago, we lost it, and I, have 2 that are in different stages of wear. He didn't want them. And as soon as I found the actual one, I said, go get it. And he actually picked the one out of the 2 that.
Well, then that's your magic toy right
yes.
there. And I suggest you use it. instead of fighting over whether or not he goes gets a different toy. I mean, I would use that. And here's a little tip: before you send him to go get it, make him sit her down first.
Oh, I do that.
Yeah, and make him sit, and then the reward is letting him go get it.
Okay.
So, okay.
Yeah, we've gotten into that habit of sitting before opening the door,
Excellent.
sits before I give him the food, like all of that.
Good.
And we've improved on the down, whereas before he only went down if I had food. Now he does it if I point to the ground.
Excellent.
Sometimes.
That's what I want to hear, my little noisy little dog.
Oh, he's still just as noisy, which I guess if you have any advice on that, but that would be a separate question.
Okay.
So thank you.
Just to add a little piece there. I mean, if he's learned that get it means go get that toy, then come up with another name for some of the other toys and start naming them. So instead of saying get it, say, find the ball.
Okay.
Something along those lines, and make sure that other toy is not in the picture, and make sure that there's a lot of reward there. And that way you can actually start to distinguish. Get it means go get the mouse, or find the toy means go get the ball, or any other toy. So it might take a little bit of time, and I would make sure that you do it very separately for a while before you try mixing it.
Yeah.
So that you can see that the dog's clearly making the right decision.
Okay.
Probably do some testing, but you can certainly teach them the difference between the two if you choose.
Yeah, we just realized this in the last few days, where I would start playing with him, and eventually he would just go and get any toy, but then I started noticing that he would just go to this particular one, and then we did a few tests, and in fact, go get it. Even if I'm playing with the other one, if I just say go get it, he just kind of acts confused. I'm like, go get what? I don't see it. You didn't throw that toy. So
that's funny.
It's a quirk, but it's cute.
So I've got another question that just came in here. It says, need advice on how we can make our dogs drop release the toy once they go get it and have it in their mouth. So how do we get the dog to drop the toy? There's a lot of different ways to do this. I'm actually curious how many different ways our trainers can come up with of ways to teach the dog to drop what they have in their mouth. So who would like to start us off with one at a time?
I'll start with the hard one. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So are you going to go?
Well, I was going to go.
Go ahead.
The one thing that I like to start out with initially before the dog gets that adrenaline rush of playing with the ball and getting that big game of tug of war is to have two. Having two of everything and initially having them grab it, release it, getting those verbal cues of, whether saying fetch or take it or drop it or out, being able to have that application. Generally, when there's two of something, the dog's going to want the other one, or even using food in that time frame as well as a big reward. When you're playing fetch with the dog initially and they're running out and going to get it and they bring it back in, they're super excited, they're worked up, they're adrenalized, they're not thinking clearly to be able to release it at the drop of a dime. So you really want to work things pretty close quartered. So then you're not working them in such high adrenaline. Tag,
awesome.
you're it.
Okay. A lot of times what I hear from folks is the dog sure enough brings it back, but they're going to hold on to it and start tugging and, getting into sometimes a very spirited game of not letting it go. Here's an old gun dog trick that you can try. So grab hold of the ball or the rag or whatever it is you're tugging with the dog with, lift one of their ear flaps, or if they have pointed ears, you don't have to do that. And I want you to just give a quick blast of air into their ear. So say give, and then pretend like you're spitting in their ear, kind of like, they'll usually spit it right out. You do that a couple of times. When you say give, they're going to start spitting that ball right out into your hand. So remember, don't actually spit. It's just a little burst of air into their ear. Now, one more thing to say on that. Don't do that if you have a dog that's inclined to bite you. Okay? You don't want to be there if they're inclined to bite.
Who else has a response here? We got two ways to get the dog to out or drop their toy. Terrence.
Yeah, so I will add into it. My dogs were kind of talking to one another back there, so I'm sorry about that. Basically, like Jess said, have two of any one thing. The biggest thing is that you want to mark it. So when they release it, good, and then toss the other one. The other way, again, like Jess said, is with food. Taking food, the higher value. As soon as they release it, you say good, you mark the behavior, you give them a treat, and then throw the toy again. So it's like a 3-step process. You give the command, drop it or out. They drop it, they release it. You say good, give them a treat or the other toy. The other toy obviously is going to send them back the other way. The treat keeps them right there. Then you throw the other toy to release them. So it's just, pretty much what Jess said, just adding maybe one or two, a couple extra steps.
Awesome. Anybody else want to add into that? If not, I might add a little piece here. So one of the things that I do with my dogs is I've got, most of you know this probably already, I have a bunch of Labradors. They're pretty much retrieving machines. And what I make sure to do is whenever I throw the ball for my dogs, when they bring it back to me, the first thing that I do is I praise my dog. I don't try to take the toy from them immediately. I think what a lot of people do is the dog goes out, they took this long chase, busted their tail to get the tennis ball and bring it back to you, and then we take it from them. Takes all the fun out of it for them, makes them not want to give it up. So what I do is when the dog comes back to me, the first thing I do is I usually squat down. I get nice and low to the ground, and I just scratch my dog on the chest. So like right here on the breastplate, and I just kind of scratch right there, and I'll pet him there for 5, 10, 15, 20 seconds and just praise them for coming back to me.
What happened?
Talk to them, tell them how good they are. And then when I want them to actually release the ball, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll put my hand on the toy, and then I will tell them the command out. And if they are really, and again, you have to watch, it depends on the type of dog that you have, but if you have a dog that's, really not wanting to give that toy up, you have to kind of look at how serious is the dog about keeping that toy. Are they willing to bite you over it? Or are they just kind of kidding? Sometimes just a little bit of change of inflection in your voice can be enough to get them to spit that toy. Some dogs, you might have to blow in their ear. Other dogs, you might have to try to distract them with one toy. And if you have a dog like mine, then he'll try to retrieve 2 things at the same time. So that doesn't always work out. With my dogs, I've also found that, just folding their cheek in just a little bit and just pushing kind of against their tooth with their lip a little bit, just putting a little bit of pressure there. And they go, that's different. And it causes them to open up their mouth. So it's a lot of different ways to get that to happen, but that's my 2 cents on how I ultimately handle that issue with my dogs. Looks like we have another question here. Can you explain how to start to train Stella to come? She thinks it's a game and wants me to chase her. Oh, this will be a great one here. So who would like to start off by answering this one?
Yeah, put a long line on her. Okay. So you have to teach the dog the action on this before you just yell come. They don't know come. I think I alluded to that earlier tonight. The dog doesn't know what to do. You're yelling come. They don't know that. And pretty soon you're yelling come again, and then you start chasing them, and then that becomes fun. And then when you finally catch them, you're mad at them. So what kind of a lesson was that? You taught them to run from you and don't get caught, because you'll be mad at them if you catch them. The other thing you can do is go the opposite way, run from the dog. A lot of times that'll get them to start chasing you a little bit, and then you can, of course, catch them. But the best thing I would tell you to do is get a leash on Stella for a while until you can do it with a drop leash. And I'm talking about a long, lengthy piece of rope here, 20, 30, 40 feet, whatever you need, piece of clothesline. When you find you're not grabbing that leash as much to try to help her come in, then maybe you can take off and see what happens. But the biggest thing I see is people yelling come the whole time they're chasing the dog, and then they're mad when they finally catch them. They're frustrated, and the dog's going to run from you a little more the next time.
And to add in what George said, the long line is definitely the best way to go. One of the things you want to remember is the reason why dogs don't come back to us is because whatever it is they're doing is better than coming back to you. So therefore, you want to make yourself the big enough reason to come back. And as they are coming back to you, you want to throw them a party. I mean, act like you hit the lottery, act like you're a millionaire overnight. Throw them a party every single time. They're going to remember that when they do come back to you. However, you have to reinforce it with the long line. And the reason why you want to do it with the long line, because you're not giving them too many options. So basically, if they don't come, you kind of bring the line towards you. And even if you still have to pull them, in the beginning, you tell them, good. I mean, you still act like it was the biggest thing that they ever did. And once they realize that coming back to you is fun, then you will on your way. But again, long line is the best way, or a leash, some type of leash, because you don't want the dog to have too many options. When they start having multiple options as to what they can do when they hear that word come, now you're not keeping it simple, and they're not understanding what come is.
Awesome.
And I'll just add one more thing to that, as you're training come, just always make sure that when you finish the training, just add some play time, add a little walk, add a little, fun game to it, that you don't just end by taking him inside, putting him in the crate, stepping on the dog. To have a little fun, so they always know that it's very positive when they're coming to you and something great happens until they're really trained.
I'd like to add just one more, I think, important thing in all of this is that there's a big difference between having an actual training session with your dog and working on sit stays and recalls and come with distractions in an actual training session, but then actually applying it in a practical scenario. I can work recalls with one of my dogs all day, and in ideology, you would assume that he's out sniffing in the yard. I say, come, he looks at me, takes a couple of steps and darts off to chase the bird or the bunny rabbit. So we want to look at not setting the dog up for failure in any moment. We have to be able to reinforce whatever the cues are that we are giving. And again, it's not always going to be in a training scenario. But the more that you practice your training in a practical situation, you will see that turn around quite quickly. It's all based on the repetition of how it's working.
If I could add, you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, if I could just add one more beneficial thing to do is sort of like what Jeff said, when you're doing a training session, practice rewarding your dog for allowing you to grab them either by the collar or their scruff, so that when it is time to grab them, once they get to you, let's say in a practical moment you called them to you for safety, they're not so shy when they see the hand hovering over them, or you go to try and reach down for them. So something just to add.
Awesome. And I feel like why not just add a little bit more here? And I know that we've got some other comments that have come in, so I'll get you guys here in just a second. George kind of alluded to this earlier, that dogs are always learning either by design or by default. And, ultimately, one of the things that I've seen happen with people is that they will say come to their dog, and their dog has actually been conditioned to running away from them. when they say come, because it's become a game. So they say come, and the dog actually starts to move away from them versus move towards them. They've been conditioned the opposite of what actually was intended. And so one of the things that I think is really important, especially when your skill set is not necessarily very experienced, is to really think about two different commands. One would be an informal recall command. For me and my dogs, it's let's go. I can't guarantee that it's going to happen. I use let's go when I want the dog to follow me through the house. I want them to be with me and get to me. But it's kind of, at your own pace. So when I'm walking from one room to another, I know I'm going to leave. I say, let's go. And my dogs don't want to usually be left behind, just like for the reason we do long line work at times. And so they get with me and they start getting conditioned that when they hear let's go, they should just catch up and get with me. And that's a very informal way for me to just take the time that I'm already spending with my dogs and teach them that informal recall. Then when I'm in a training session, or when I can guarantee, and when I say guarantee, George or several of us would say guaranteeing is when you can bet your dog's life on it that they are going to do it. That's the time that you can actually use the come command with your dog. But if you can't guarantee it's going to happen, don't say it, because your dog is ultimately learning the wrong thing at that moment. So consider the idea of having two different commands. One that you will always enforce, that's the 911 come command, get to my feet right now. And then your let's go for just following you as a more informal, not as enforced type of command. So we're going to go ahead and move forwards here. We talked about that a while, but I think that there was lots of great stuff there. So thank everybody for that. Let's see here. Let me just make sure that I didn't miss anything. I have a 5-month-old 44-pound puppy who is not aware of her size. She tends to walk all over or even sit on our older, smaller 20-pound dog, and sometimes jumps on the couch and hurts us. How can we teach her to be a little bit more gentle and be aware of her big size? Who would like to chime in for that?
Big George. How old is this puppy again, Andrew?
I believe it's 5 months.
5 months. Yeah, I'd probably have that puppy around on a leash around the house, around that smaller dog. And don't be afraid to step in if she's being too rough with the little one. That dog's literally half her size. She can obviously injure it. I'm sure she doesn't mean to, but having a leash, once you let go of the dog's leash, you're not teaching very much. You're kind of testing. And it sounds like that dog's failing a few tests, like staying off the couch. We teach a few things in our lessons and classes and things to help with that busyness that a young puppy would have in the house. But I would not give that dog that reign of freedom if that's happening, because every time she does it, she's getting practice at it.
Excellent. Well said. Anybody want to add to that?
I was trying to talk. I totally agree with George. You want to keep some type of leash. You can get what's called a drag line. I totally suggest a drag line for your dog, especially at such a young age, so that you can guide them. Because when they have too much freedom, it becomes hardwired in their brain and they think it's a way of life, and you have larger problems down the road. So just guiding the dog, and again, you don't have to be really forceful with them, but just, pulling them off the couch. It's kind of hard to do it when they just have a collar on, or maybe not even anything. But when you have a long line, well, not a long line, but a drag line, which is about 4 feet, some of them are even like 3 feet, you have something to grab onto, pull the dog off and guide it to the right place. And if that doesn't work, then you take their freedom away from them for a little while by containing them. Put them in a crate. Let them sit in there for about 5 minutes. Bring them back out. They do it again. Let them go. Take them back. Put them in the crate again. and let them sit in there for 15 minutes and slowly just increase the time. And then they'll start to understand. The biggest thing is that they want to be around people. They love their freedom. And when you take their freedom from them, they start to learn from it. And crating your dog when they do something like that is not a bad thing to do. A lot of people think that crating is bad or that I'm punishing my dog, but you're only punishing your dog when you actually physically do something to them while they're in that crate. Other than that, it's just a crate, and it's a place to go.
Yeah, and to piggyback on what Terrence said and complete agreement, this kind of goes back to the first question that Andrew had asked all of us on the call was, what was the single most important thing that the dogs should learn? And if my answer was like rules of the house and boundaries of the house. We want to, and we preach it all the time, the 3 pillars of management. At any point in time, one of those pillars should be in play, whether it's containment, whether the leash is on the dog with the restraint or you're physically holding back the dog, or you're teaching them something with training. So always in each moment when the dog's struggling with following some sort of instruction or directive, use those pillars of management to help the dog understand what's expected of them in those situations and environments.
Awesome. Okay, the next question that we've got here, when working on Come With, I want to say, is it Sophie? I think so. I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce your dog's name. I'm sorry. I'm butchering it.
Okay, but you're okay.
Okay. She gets excited and jumps on us. How can I prevent that but still want her to come to us? So she's coming when she's called, but then she's jumping on you when she gets there. What's the magic trick to get her to hit the brakes a little further away from you and go into a perfect sit and look at you, right? Is what you want? I'm sure we got an answer for that.
I'll start. Yeah, teaching that sit. You know, if the dog's coming in hot, remember, it takes a moment for them to hear the command, figure it out, slow down, and then come up to a stop at your feet. So if she's coming in like a hot rod, I suggest calling that sit about 10 feet out. By the time she collects herself, she should be right about at your feet. Now, if you're telling her to sit and she's not sitting yet, you know where you need to be working. And I know you've been taught that, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, get that sit cleaned up. But the faster the dog's coming in, the sooner you want to throw that command so they collect themselves and don't run into you and jump up.
Totally. Oh, shoot.
You're good.
You're good.
I've been muting and unmuting. Totally in agreement. And, you know, to make sure that you're not wasting your command, again, have some type of leash on them. I would even, again, live it as far as everyday obedience, but have that line just drawn and you have that line on them, dragging it. And then when they come into you, give them a command. If they don't do it, then follow it up with a little bit of guidance. The biggest thing, and I think I'm not saying that anyone is leaving it out, but the biggest thing you want to do is you want to mark the behavior that you're looking for. Even if you have to physically place them in it, you want to mark that behavior so that they know that, okay, they said good after I did this. And it'll make them want to do it more.
I'm going to piggyback on something that Terrence said, is the inflection of how we're saying come. If you think like if the dog's out and they're coming in and we're like, come, yes, and they're really excited, they're just building up that excitement. So even practicing your recalls in a normal conversational tone, you know, in a bland, whisper it every once in a while. So then the dog can hear it in different inflections of your tone. And then you're going to be at a better point to be able to help the dog. You know, so again, think about the situation and scenario. And again, just to try back of what George said, is calling the sit sooner. So he has time to process what you said when he's coming in.
And think about your body language at that time too. You want to make sure that as you're giving that sit command, you probably don't want to be moving away from the dog. because moving away from the dog is going to continue to draw them into you. So you should be actually moving towards the dog when you're giving that sit command, and sometimes even just taking a couple quick, fast steps at the dog while they're coming to you. They'll go, hold on a second, what are you doing? I'm not used to seeing that, and it'll cause them to slow down and hit the brakes. Okay, anybody else adding to that, or we'll just jump into the next thing, which looks like another great question here. So I need some advice. Should there be a difference between free walks compared to heel walking? Also, should heel walking be a short walk only? Short means less than 30 minutes. Can't wait to hear responses on this one.
Anybody going first?
Yeah, I'll go. Yes, there is a difference between a free walk and a heel. Heel is considered structured. Walk beside me, whether it's left side or right side. No sniffing, no peeing, no pooping. Just walk right beside me. Stay right here with me. A free walk is almost considered like a let's go, come in my direction, and you just keep moving. For the dogs, they should understand, and they need to understand the difference between the two, because they do have that freedom on the let's go, and you're walking down the sidewalk, and they're just kind of in the vicinity of you, walking in the same direction, or you're in the path, and they're walking in the same direction. As far as the length of time, it's totally up to you. You can train your dog to heel for an hour if you wanted them to. But the biggest thing is somewhere in between there, let them be free. Let them be free. Let them go be a dog. And in between that, you just kind of want to, again, like Jess said, the inflection of your voice makes all the difference in the world. And, if your dog likes to put his nose on the ground all the time as you're walking, start doing misdirectional turns, like switching your direction when you turn. Walk a little bit one direction, and then go right back down the sidewalk the other direction. And before you know it, if you did this consistently, your dog is going to keep your dog guessing and wondering what you're doing next. And before you know it, you at 3 blocks, 4 blocks, 5 blocks, and around the whole neighborhood without your dog sniffing at all.
Yeah, that's awesome. Getting some variance in the routine, right?
Right.
That's awesome.
So I'll agree with everything Terrence just said. My own personal preferences is this. If I'm moving from A to B, like I have some place to get to, I insist on the dog being completely attentive to me every step of the way. I don't allow a lot of sniffing and all that kind of stuff. Not that that's bad. It's just if I'm trying to get from A to B, now's not the time to be sniffing. If you want your dog to, wander and smell the roses, what I tend to do is I'll tend to stop and give them that opportunity. I'll go find an appropriate area to do it and then cut them loose and let them do that. There's nothing wrong with a relaxed walk. It does not have to be in the heel position, but I still want their brain upon me if we're moving. That's just my personal preference. And I said earlier tonight, what the dog's looking at is what he's thinking about and what he's, considering. So I like him to be considering me when I'm moving, especially if you're near a road or on a sidewalk. I find it's much easier. Just go find yourself a little piece of ground and cut them loose and let them do whatever you want.
And if I could add what George just said, a little trick that I would do with all my dogs, puppies, I would let them walk free. I wouldn't even say anything, and I would just change direction. And every time they came back in my direction, I say good, and I just keep walking. And all of a sudden, their mind is zoned out somewhere else. I'll switch my direction again. Now I wouldn't do back and forth, but I'll do back and forth, left and right, and we'll go a while. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, I just go the other direction. That's going to keep your dog always wondering what you're doing. Again, that's that variety, right? When you add variety to most of your training, it makes your dog be attentive because they're always wondering what you're going to do next. But I still throw that good in there.
That's great. Anybody else want to add to that?
I have a question on that.
Sure.
So while we're walking, for them to walk with us, should we say heel like repeatedly during the walk, or 'cause I was only able to attend one of the middle school classes where they started teaching that before everything kind of shut down. So, you know, a little direction on how to get him to heel would be great. What I've been doing is just when we walk, you know, I pull the collar a little bit so that he doesn't pull me. And whenever he's walking right next to me with like the leash a little bit loose, I say, good boy. And I try to keep it that as much as possible. After he's done his business, when we first go out, I just let him sniff because he needs to go. But when we go for the walk, I try to keep him, but I don't really, you know, I say things like, you know, let's go. If he stops and smells something, I say, let's go. And I pull him. If he tries to go ahead of me, I just kind of pull the collar a little bit and just tell him, you know, stay with me or something like that. I don't know because I'm not sure if I should be repeating the heel command while we're walking.
Well, here's what I'll say about that. If you need to repeat it, do it. Like, you know, if he gets out of that heel position and you make a turn or something, there's nothing wrong with calling heel again.
Okay.
For now, because he's stone green at it. I want him to hear what he's doing while he's doing it.
Okay.
But ultimately, it's going to be a one command thing.
Okay.
But while you're teaching it, you don't want to be like heel, 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 heel. But you might say, when he gets in the right position, name that, okay? When he's in that correct position, say heel and start moving. If you have to stop and put him back into that position, and that's what I suggest you do when you're teaching heel, stop, put him back into heel, and then I'd say it heel, forward again. Maybe you get 5 steps one time, and then you get 10 steps, and then you get 20. Nothing wrong with that, but you shouldn't probably be saying heel, 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 and trying to fight him while you're in motion.
So
Remember,
the heel,
the position.
The heel is just to get him next to you. It's not while you're moving.
Right. Heel is not, here's the way I explain it. I don't feel heel is a way of walking. I feel it's a position that the dog has to be in. And then the position happens to start moving and he's got to stay in that position.
Okay.
So that's the way I kind of try to explain it. Heel is more about him being on, I'm always going to teach you on the left side. That's traditional. But I don't care, heel, right or left, doesn't matter to me. But I always teach it to the left because I'm totally uncoordinated trying to teach it to my right. So, but yeah, I might go heel, get 5 steps, stop, you know, and then say heel again, take 5 or 6, 7 steps and stop. So you're more teaching him how to move along with that left leg.
Okay. Even if we're walking, like the way we practice our sits when we're walking is I walk and I stop, and now he's just, the minute I stop, he just sits right next to me without me saying anything.
Very good.
Okay, so that's a heel, basically.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're gonna get tight on you. We're gonna when we get back into action, we're gonna make it hard on you and make it really accurate. But yeah, that's basically a heel.
Okay.
But the trick is when you start moving that left foot, he's got to go with it.
Okay, I'll practice that.
Yep.
And then the other thing, you know, if I have him sitting in front of me, because the way we practice it in class, it was if he's sitting in front of me, try to like get him to turn around.
Sure.
And for that, I still have to do the treat and like.
Well, go right ahead. You're okay there. That's fine.
Okay.
That's not going to slow you down none.
Okay.
But what you can do is start sneaking in there and getting a little random sometime and faking that treat out.
Okay.
So there ain't a treat, but then have a treat once in a while. Don't forget to mark it and praise. Yeah. And but yeah, get him in to move that. Another thing you can do is if he's sitting in front of you, just say heel and start walking through him, and he'll spin.
Okay.
You know, and then maybe go with you a little bit. Okay.
So I have a great idea. So I'm sure this won't be the last phone call, video call that we do. In fact, I know that there will be more of them. And so when we send out the next email about the next call, which I can't tell you right now when that's going to be, but it'll be hopefully in the near future. When you submit questions, thank you for those of you that did submit questions. And I want to hit those real quick. And then I think I might have one more question left, and then we're going to jump off here. But you can just ask in your question, you know, can you demonstrate what proper heel looks like? And if we know about it prior to the call, then one of us trainers will set up with our own dogs so that we can demonstrate for you on the phone call. But
That'll
that's
be
something
very
that you guys need to ask. So somebody told me a long time ago, if you ask a really good question, you get a really good answer. So I'm just going to tell you guys, think of really good questions to ask us, and then we can find ways to bring those to fruition for you if we can. And I think that's definitely something we could do for you.
If I could just add very quickly, I do want to commend you, Daniela. Yesterday when I had Leo in Play Academy, I noticed that he was already gravitating towards the side. So thank you for putting in the work.
Thank you guys. I mean, you guys have been great.
So the next one that I had here is we've been practicing the let's go command on a long lead, but sometimes they will get ahead of us. How do I get her not to walk ahead of us? I'm not sure how we're going to answer that on here in a short manner, but let's see what we can do here.
I got an answer.
Yep.
The quickest way to get a dog behind you is turn around. Now they're following you. Start teaching that dog that's the view they want to see. So if they're getting out in front of you, just turn around. And,
180 degrees.
Yeah, now the dog's seeing you from behind, and it's a following now. It's that quick.
Right.
Remember, you're teaching the dog how to walk. You're teaching it. The walk in the neighborhood that everybody wants to go to is an end game. Got to teach the dog how to do it first.
Right, and that goes to what we've been saying all night, is misdirectional walking is the absolute key to let's go. Let's go is probably your easiest command that you can do and reinforce without you even reinforcing it. So again, but when they come in your direction, even if they're not right next to you, still mark that. I'm just a big fan. You hear me say it all the time. Mark the behavior. When they hear that word good, it's like it's just such a great thing, and it goes into the dopamine of their mind. And good things happen when they hear that.
Just to add to the leash work side of things,
Yeah.
When you go for a walk with your dog, they don't know what's on your agenda of the walk. You know, they don't know at what point it's okay to go to the bathroom, it's okay to sniff, at what point they're supposed to be attentive. Setting that up for them and being consistent with that each walk is going to allow them to start to understand what to do at certain intervals of the walk. You know, if you get out and the first thing that they do is they run around, they sniff, they go to the bathroom, that's going to be the first thing that they want to do. The training of the walk starts before you even walk out of the front door of your house. It's when that leash goes on. I know for our dogs, when we walk through the door going outside, we stop, we sit, we take a couple of steps, we stop and sit. It's not about the destination of where you're going on the walk. It's how you're moving together. And I think that's the biggest thing.
Okay, Jessica, the two questions that you had sent in, let's go ahead and run through those.
Okay, so the first one, it also dealt with some jumping behaviors. We are having issues with jumping, also info on ideas of how to socialize our puppy during this social distancing. So that's a really good question.
So I just want to be clear on the question, how to socialize the puppy during social distancing?
Yes.
It's so weird. So
I know.
weird. But we can answer it. No, it's a good question. It's a good question. And I'll just add something in real quick here. I really want to let trainers do this, but I have dog trainer in me, so sometimes I can't keep my mouth shut. This is one of those times. So socialization for dogs doesn't mean socializing for you. Socialization is about creating experiences for the dog. So you do not necessarily need to be around other people and other dogs at very, very close range. It's more about being in the presence. So you could be on the opposite side of a park practicing sit with your dog in the presence of other dogs where they get to smell them in the air and hear them bark, you know, those kinds of things. They get to have that experience of being around that dog, you know, while having a positive experience, and that's certainly going to help. Obviously, you know, having the actual interaction between the dog and the person, or the dog and another dog, is going to be a bit more challenging. Obviously, you know, there's places like us for the dog piece, and for the human piece. So if you've got a really young dog and you can't go out and get in places, we are a place that can happen at. But it is a very challenging thing to be able to do. So who else wants to add?
I totally agree with Andrew. Socialization is just about the experiences that the dog have, and try to get them around as much as you can. You know, noises, sounds, people. Establish the rule that you want. Again, by having them on a leash, you want to be, when you're exposing them, and have them on the leash, because that keeps them safe also. But it also gives you the opportunity to guide them to make the right decision.
Awesome. Jessica, what's our next question?
The next question is, how do I stop Trey from losing his mind every time he spots a squirrel? Jump on that one. See, Candace, you want to answer your own question?
I'll give just a piece to this, which is name it. Name the behavior that you don't necessarily want. Can be a starting point. Who else wants to add to it?
So the question was how to stop a dog from chasing a squirrel? Was that the question?
Getting worked up, excited, losing his mind.
Remember, so it kind of goes back to become and making your dog excited about coming to you. So therefore, when your dog sees a squirrel, you know, give them some leash guidance and have their favorite toy there. Have a favorite treat for them. Good, walk the other way. And I would even bring them back to the squirrel to kind of repeat it several times so that the dog gets it and they know that, okay, when I hear my name or I hear that command, good things happen. And it takes their mind off of that. It kind of gives them that distraction. And then, like George said, whatever the dog is focused on is what they're thinking about. So if they're looking at that squirrel, they focus on it. So then you use that knowledge that you have of that and get them focused on you. And you don't have to yell, but, you know, to kind of get their attention a little bit with the leash also, some guidance, and follow up with a high value with that treat or a toy. I've even thrown down a toy, like I'll call their name, and then I'll throw a toy down real quick, and I make that toy become alive just like that squirrel was alive.
Yeah, just to also to piggyback on that, that is one of those hard impulse control moments that we as humans and handlers aren't always prepared for. The dog can generally spot it so much faster than we can, and then we're left not being prepared of how to handle it. So we have to learn how to have that, you know, a knee-jerk reaction of, you know, the same thing if you're driving along down the street and somebody pulls out in front of you and slams on the brake, how quick can we do that as well? How quick can we get that dog to turn back to us? So whether, you know, Andrew and George both mentioned it as well as, and Terrence too, the redirectional turns in that moment. When the dog is flying one direction, you take 3 or 4 steps in the opposite, then where's his mind at that point? As 2 steps forward, throw that praise. Don't wait until he gets directly to you. Start with that good, yes, come, all in those moments leading up to his arrival at you.
Why don't you just let him chase the squirrel? And I'm not saying that. No, I'm serious. Look at it this way. That squirrel, it could be very well seen as a positive reinforcer, couldn't it? His ability to chase that squirrel could be is very much a plus for him at that moment. Have you thought about making him do a behavior, i.e. sit, and then give him a little chance to get after that squirrel a little bit? You know, now that's an extreme example, but you know, when I find a dog you got these dogs that are buried with their nose in the ground, I will make them sit, and then I will let them sniff as a reward for sitting.
And also I think it also, you know, when you think about like what the breed of the dog is, some dogs are more apt to wanting to chase animals. I mean, Buck's discovered bunny rabbits. So that's a good training challenge for me. So every time we go outside, the first thing, my mindset switches to training opportunity. And I know in certain things, we were talking about this the other day of, you know, barn hunt would be an awesome sport to get into with Buck, completely side tangent, but that's also going to build up his drive to chase. You know, so to think of where that excitement and adrenaline's coming from, but that's a whole nother conversation. That's for another day.
Yeah, I used to do what George is talking about with my old dog Tanner, and I would, you know, just tell him squirrel, and he would just start running and barking. Like even if there wasn't a squirrel there, he became programmed so when he heard squirrel, he could just go kind of nutso, and it became a great reward for him. I'd, you know, tell him to do something, and then he would do it, and I'd say squirrel, and he'd take off and go run up and bark at a tree, and he had a great time, and you know, we were both satisfied. So
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and just to add to that, you know, I got into training because of my border collie, and of course, you know, she had the drive, that herding instinct. So I let her herd parked cars because she herded cars. That's what she got excited about. So she'd do something, going back to a couple of the trainer's points, you know, she'd do something for me. She'd come back to me, and then I'd let her release her, and she could go herd a parked car.
Jessica, is that everything for us?
That was the last question.
Awesome. So real quickly, I'm going to wrap things up and put a bow on things here. Thank you all for jumping on here. When we're done with the call here today, what would be really, really helpful is if you would just send a quick email to us. You know, you can send it to just info@DogiZone.com. and just give us any feedback that you have. Like, I thought it was great, amazing. I'd love it if you did this. Like any feedback that you have from us would be really, really appreciated. And I know if we get a lot of good feedback, that ultimately that's going to probably make the training team less concerned about doing this and make us want to do it more. So, you know, the more good feedback that we get from you all, the more likely we will to make this happen on a more regular basis if it's something that's appreciated by people. If we only have like 3 or 4 people that, you know, think it's good and, you know, it's a lot of time, and we kind of go, I don't know if we should do it on a regular basis or not. But we want to make sure that we keep serving you all. And if you found this valuable, we want to know that. If there's something that we could have done differently to make it more valuable for you, we want to know what that is. So please be frank with us. You're not going to hurt our feelings. We've got pretty thick skin as a team. And so any feedback that you have would be super appreciated. So thank you all for all of your support and just being loyal clients. We really appreciate it. And, you know, we wish each of you great health right now, strength and peace during this crazy time. And, you know, if you need us, we are here for you. We're doing virtual lessons. If you need something, but you don't want to come into the facility, we can get a trainer on the phone with you or on a video call to, you know, work through things. So please do not hesitate to ask. And we do look forward to